live yet. We're not live yet. We're live now. We're
We're
live.
live. Hey.
Yeah, here it is. Wednesday night. So, oh man, there's already a bunch of people in here.
Yeah.
The StreamYard's in here. The One-Eyed Cat's in here. Uncle Squirrel has squirrel bombed us. Fab Race
Nice.
Mod repeats. Fab Race Mod repeat bombing us. Hello from Northeast Dragway. Dr. Art is busy rehabbing in the studio audience.
Nice.
Colleen Tebow made it in. And then Aaron Germanson is here. Let's see. David James, hell no, from Iowa. Yeah, okay. Well, how cold is it up there right now? It's got to be freaking chilly now. It's getting cool down here in Tennessee, and that generally means you guys are Arctic temperatures.
Pretty close to it.
Yeah, the wife is here. Let's see, Elizabeth Pulido. Happy Wednesday from Halloween. Did you see my new Halloween? I guess thumbnail for the.
I did
live, and I also have some. Input from. I think next week we're going to have Riley from Riley's Rebuilds on again.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah. And she was saying she wants to do a live feed from SEMA. So wow. I wonder if there's anybody in the audience down for that.
I'm down.
Yeah, I'm down too. Let's see. One-Eyed Cat says, "Been here so long, I took a nap." Well, we go live at 7, and then we were live at 7. So I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. Terrence Seymour, Buff's Garage is in here. Dean Stevenson. Aaron German says it's 50s in Baja, Saskatchewan. So, no, that's not too bad, I guess.
Is that a place?
I don't think it's a real place. I'm assuming he means it's from Saskatchewan, Canada, and that he's living in the southern part of it. That's kind of what I'm assuming from that. But
got it.
If there is a Baja, Saskatchewan, do they have the front BC plates?
Yeah.
I guess it'd be front BS. Front BS. Kevin is chiming in saying, "Hey guys, snowing here. Boo." Man, I'm not looking forward to any of that yet.
No. Oh, we actually bought a car when we moved here for the wife, so that we could tilt around the kids. And we were told, 1 to 2 inches a year. That's all you're really going to get. Both years we've been here, we've had over a foot of snow one time for a whole week.
Well, and ironically, I was kind of told the same thing that, Tennessee's far enough south, you don't get that northerly winter. And the first year I was here, it was -4, right? And I'm like, God, -4? Come on. Let's see. And Aaron German says that's North Dakota. North Dakota for you Baja Saskatchewans. Michael Gray, good evening, gentlemen. Y'all are right on time. Yeah, we try to be
punctual,
pretty prompt.
Yeah,
Shane tells me that 5 minutes, 5 minutes early is on time.
That's correct.
I try to be here 5 minutes earlier before, but all right. Well, hey, we need some tech questions. The interesting thing is, Mr. Professor P, I got to utilize your camshaft today in the 430. I was breaking it in, and of course, you can't hear the cam as it's up at 2,000 RPM very much. But man, when I got it broke in and I got the idle down there, she's got some thump to her.
Yep.
Yeah, and it does run good because it's literally like it won't even turn over one revolution it's running. So this motor's spot on. This guy's going to be happy with this thing.
Awesome.
And it is snappy. Man, it's snappy.
Yeah. What I got going on is I just finished the wife's dash for her Valiant. Man, was that a pain in the butt. That old circuit board, they have these little pins that come up, and I had them out and I soldered them last time, but man, they just kept coming out, and it was in and out. It literally took me 2 days to get a gas gauge, a fuel gauge, and the temperature to work correctly. It was just a pain in the butt.
Is that just because the printed circuit boards in the back are starting to come apart?
Yeah, exactly. So I had to kind of fix it. Plus, this printed circuit board's got this pin that sticks up, and then it's like a crimp. So I soldered it to it, and then I should have just taken the pin out and put a wire straight to that and then come off of it, because I ended up having to cut it and then putting in a spade connector, so that way you could actually unplug them from each one. And it just took forever, plus you got to diagnose exactly what it is.
Well, does Disney repop those things? I bet they don't.
Yeah, no, Classic Industries does, but they just want a crazy amount for them. So,
well, and there's a lot of parts that way. But
hey, we got our first question.
I see that Aaron Germanson says, question, with a A500 behind a Slant 6, do you have to find a hydraulic transmission, or can you run a later electronic?
Okay, here's the thing that I'm doing is that I'm glad he asked this question. I'm actually going to be making a video on this. There is 3 years that are the best: the 93, the 94, and 95, and they are hydraulic transmissions. And so they only have really the one. They just have the 3 wires. It's a ground, a power for the solenoid for the lockup, and then a solenoid for the overdrive. So I'm going to run it just with that B&M style that I have currently right now, as far as to actuate it. That way it's done with speed. I don't know if someone makes a controller to run the later electronic one, because all the electronics are going to be in the bottom. Personally, for what you're doing, and as far as it power wise with the Slant 6, you don't need the later electronic one. Personally, I would just find a 93, 94, 95. Those are the best years for the overdrive. They've got the most amount of clutches. So you could just do a basic rebuild and it's going to be just fine. And I actually just found a 94 A500, because, obviously TCI, you can see that. So I have one being delivered, and we're going to rebuild it. And then when I get that adapter plate made, we're going to put it in there and show people how to run it. So yeah, just keep an eye on my channel as I go through this. I'll be doing it one step at a time.
Speaking of channels, I've completely neglected mine. Trying to get this 430, and it isn't, I'm not trying to hide from anybody or anything, that I have been trying to get this 430 done. It's if you go back to like July, I was putting together a Give an F Friday 430, and one of the somebody had chimed in and said, I'm not doing this 430 justice. I need to put a camshaft in it, blah, 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 whatever, troll, hater, whatever you want to call them. And it's like, okay, I know I should put a cam in it, but, I'm working with what I got, and camcorders are impossible to get right now. Mm-hmm. So I said, if you want to put your money where your mouth is, I'll build it however you want. Well, of course, this guy didn't say anything, but somebody else chimed in, and then they're like, hey, yeah, I'll take it. I just want, some kind of healthy cam in there. All right, fine. So then we've started down this road where it took probably 2.5, 3 months to get a camshaft made for it. Mm-hmm. And now it's way behind the power curve, and to get it done and on time and be reasonable about it, I've just been bent over backwards trying to get this 430 together, and it has fought me the whole way. But I just got it running. Cam broke in, the whole 9 yards, like literally an hour ago. And guys come to pick it up tomorrow. So, I mean, I was down to the wire for real.
That's good. Well,
yeah,
you got it done.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll see how the rest of it works. Well, Colleen says she understands. Don't worry. There'll be some new content coming here soon. I'll probably be inundating you enough that you're like, Mr. Rodder, would you please go away from my feed? But yeah, I'll be jamming on here pretty soon. Let's see. Fabrice Mod Repeat says, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone on channel neglect. Right. And Chris has been working. I remember during the summer, he was working like hellacious hours, like 12 or 14 hours a day in a machine shop. So I imagine he's probably got to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Buff's Garage says that they're kind of channel burned out for prepping for No Name, but hey, we got the car done and it was a blast. Well, exactly. And you need to take a well-deserved break. You were probably hammering it out so you could get your subs, right? I was just kind of neglecting mine because I was trying to get this 430 done. Then I was weighing priorities. So Unfortunately, the YouTube channel took the hiatus, and the 430 got done, and it will be out of my garage tomorrow. And he's
You might be
weighing me
getting a
up.
new one. You might be getting another 455 soon.
Oh, another one?
Yeah,
Did you talk to that guy?
I sure did.
Oh, he sounded happy.
Sounded interested.
Okay.
So.
Well, Uncle Squirrel says, question. Anyone here running one of them Tech or Holly snipers or something equivalent? Are they worth the money? MPG improvement or better drivability? Or so what I have seen from not so much the Tech, but if you go over on Facebook, and I don't know if Uncle Squirrel has a Facebook chat page or not, but the Holly Sniper has a page on Facebook that absolutely hates the thing. That is literally just nothing but hate on this Holly Sniper. There is like injector failures and fuel pressure regulator failures and circuit board failures. And if you didn't know that Holly, it's all contained on that one unit. So your computer and everything is right there on the side of the carburetor, or I guess a TBI or whatever you want to call it. And they have a lot of issues with RFI when they originally came out from the distributor and the ignition.
Yeah.
And there's, like I said, there's a Facebook page that hates those things. Now, when I started reading that Facebook page, a lot of it can be due to poor mechanic abilities, poor installation. EFI is one of those things where you literally have to follow the instructions to the T.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there is no butt connectors. There is soldered connections, and that's all you got. And then when you're done, if you do have RFI issues, you shield the thing. You can make a shielding wire. It's not hard. It's just literally a piece of wire you wrap around the main harness and then ground it to the chassis or the battery even. But those things, in my opinion, this is me personally, is an expensive ass carburetor.
And it's funny you say that, because I'm actually doing this currently right now with my channel. I've done the 1 barrel, the 2 barrel, the Holly 2 barrel, the 500 Edelbrock, the 600 Edelbrock. I'm going to put a throttle body on it, and I'm going to go to the sequential. And the sequential, you might gain something because it, on a Slant 6, it's actually right at the port, because then fuel distribution. But for the throttle body style, I just can't see it working much better than what I'm getting right now for my Slant 6 for my setup.
Well, I know initial startup and drivability when cold is like hands down way better, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, with that said, though, once the carburetor is warmed up, because it is a mechanical device, I believe the carburetor is probably the better piece, especially for the cost.
My wife's car, the Beaver, that car, man, I got a choke on it, and it took literally 12 carburetors to make one. I took all the best pieces from each Holly 1920 that I had. But you literally go out there, step on it once, and it fires up. The choke works great. It always is running in that, that 12.8 under full throttle, 14, 13.8, right, when it's cruising down the road. So it just doesn't get any better than that. So it would be hard to beat that carb on that car.
I've just kind of looked at it like a carburetor literally took 100 years of advancement before it went away, right? And that 100 years of advancement, of redevelopment, re-engineering, because if you look at it, you had essentially just like when the carburetor was new, it was just like a fuel dumping device, right? And then you went through your iterations of different carburetors. You had your AFB would essentially have been first, okay? And the AFB didn't get it done. That's why the Holly came out, okay? And the Holly replaced essentially the AFB, was a direct replacement piece for the AFB. Then, in my opinion, you had like the GM Quadrajet came out, and I think that's even better piece than not so much the Holly for racing applications, because the Holly, hands down, racing, the Holly is pretty much the go-to carburetor.
Absolutely. That style.
Yeah. But your Quadrajet for the street is a fantastic carburetor. Then you had the one that was supposed to be the next step of evolution for the Quadrajet, which was your Thermal Quad.
Yeah.
And the thermoquad, when they were new, were probably great, but once they got some heat to them, they were a freaking
Done.
turd ball.
Yeah, you know that that Edelbrock just came out with that was the VRS style
Uh-huh.
carb. That thing's is pretty magical. I got to tell you, as far as nothing really being done with carburetors in a long time, that thing's is pretty unique.
Well, that's what you were saying. It has all kinds of different metering circuits in it. Like,
Yes.
and that's the interesting thing that I always found was like, okay, the Quadrajet had its multiple evolutions. There's actually like when you say Quadrajet, you get a different picture each time, and
Hmm.
mentally for who you are. And mine is the 75 to like 81 carburetors, and that's the second generation, the M4 MC, right?
Yeah.
And that one actually has 4 circuits in it, right? Now your your Edelbrock VRS carburetor, that one has 4 circuits, right?
Yes. But they all talk to each other, and they. I don't want to go too deep into it because it would
Well, the
bore the crap out of
Holly,
us.
which it's based off of, right? Because it's a
Yep.
4150 style carburetor. The
Ish.
Holly
Yes.
only has 3.
That's right. And some of their high end stuff is got 4 or 5. A lot of the guys who would run, like, say, the trans brake in the pro stock, people who were like, trying to cut a light or whatever, they were actually being able to tune the intermediate circuits. Well, this thing's got 2 basically intermediate circuits, and the intermediate circuit is essentially infinitely adjustable, which is just amazing.
So and it just works in a certain like a velocity band where
Yes.
it'd have to be like say like 400 CFM to 1200 CFM or something of that nature,
It
and
just
that's where
works
that
on.
intermediate circuit would work, and then the other one would taper all in there and somewhere in between at like say 1,000 to 1,500 or whatever. I don't know. I'm just making this up, but
Yeah, it's basically just Bernoulli. It's just a pressure drop deal going across the idle circuits and how it's going to the to the jets. So it's I'll talk more about it when on my channel, or maybe we'll do a segment on this maybe on a Saturday. I'll bring one of the engineers that actually did it, that help get it to where it's at right now, and then he'll explain everything about it.
well, Uncle Squirrel is saying that I'm snooping around for options for a cruiser. Nothing too crazy, 450-ish horsepower, big block Chevy. My go-to carburetor for cruiser is Quadrajet. That's what it's a good carburetor. For street
For
drivability, there's like few things that are better.
for me personally, I like the Edelbrock style, or just like the Carter style,
Mhm.
just because it is so infinitely tunable. For me, it just makes sense because that's just what I learned on. For me, they work really well, and probably just like the Quadrajet, there's really no gaskets below the fuel line. So for a daily driver, that's going to be basically heat soaking on and off, 5 or 6 times in one day. You're not going to catch as many leaks on it, and it'll basically run no matter what.
And on my I guess I'm biased on my opinion as well because uh, Quadrajet was the easy one to get, right? It was like you go to the junkyards in the 90s and there was a freaking billion of them to choose from.
Yeah.
Um, the Edelbrocks, I've never owned one. I've
Oh, really?
never had one. I've never had one. So I don't
I'll
know how
send you
awesome
one.
they are.
You want me to send you one? I'll send you one.
No, I don't even have anything it could bolt on.
You can put it on your engine stand. I
You know what? I
promise
could
you.
probably put it on my 300. It's got that
Yeah,
weird flange, and I put an adapter to put a Quadrajet on it. So
yeah.
it does have that flange. I could probably use that.
I got that 600. I'm going to take that 600 off my Slant 6 pretty soon. I'll put it back to the factory and I'll send it to you. You basically, I'll set it here. How about this? This will be a
How
test.
about we send it to Riley, have her rebuild it to put it factory specs?
No, I'll do it for you. And in fact, I'm not even going to put it factory specs. I'm going to set it so that way you put it on your car and it should start up perfectly and run just perfect. How
Oh,
about
that'd
that?
be awesome.
I'll do that
Well,
here, and we'll see if I'm right or not. How about that?
okay, it sounds good.
Okay.
Tom Brown says we touched on 5.7 swap cams last week. If they're so much better on the bearings, why are not all older cams cut this way?
You
Does it
can. You
change
can
the
get them this
sound
way.
of the engine also?
Yes. Yeah, it's all the above. Actually, it's a 4723 swap. That the 47 swap does help a little bit, but the 4723 swap, which is considered either the LS or the Windsor firing order, depending on which camp you're in, But yes, it is much better on the bearings, and that's the reason why the LS engine went to that exclusively. Also, too, yes, it does change the sound of the engine, because now instead of 2 pulses coming out on the driver's side, you're going to have 2 pulses coming out on the passenger side. Plus the way that it's talking to each other back and forth, so it does
Well,
change
it
it 100%.
synchronizes all the pulses as well.
Yeah, that's
Like,
right. It balances them.
if you've ever heard a 5-liter HO Mustang at full sing going on the track,
Exactly.
they have their own sound. That's exactly why, because it uses that 351 Windsor, that 4723 cam swap,
Yep.
as the factory cam.
Yep.
So, but if you've noticed, LS at full sing kind of sounds the same way, and that's just because the firing order is very similar.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, let's see. Mopar Man 1978. I think I found out the noise issue 727 in my truck. Thinking back to the end of the converter tube looked like it had a flat end from rubbing, sharp edges that would cause that converter fully engaged.
Wait a second. So he has on his.
I'm trying to follow this, and I'm not. Maybe I missed a part.
He's saying that the tube on the converter tube is that. Oh, he's probably talking about the actual tube where the 2 dogs are that engage into the pump. And he has a flat end from rubbing on the sharp edge that would cause the converter to fully engage. That would be probably because the flex plate is either turned the wrong direction. I've seen that before. So that way it's actually pushing the converter farther into the pump, and that would cause a rubbing noise. Or the pump is going out.
You know what? I kind of am following this.
Yeah.
So on a Mopar pump, is it kind of like a GM, like a
it's got
350 or 400, where it's got the notches in the nose of the converter?
Yeah, it's notched. Exactly.
I've seen it where those notches get damaged.
Yes.
And they don't fully seat in the pump. They'll grab and bind.
Yes.
And then you can't get the converter all the way in, and it'll still run, but it's bound. And
it makes sound, and it pushes on
the housing, and it causes a hell of a noise.
Yeah. Mopar Man 1978, send me some pictures to Slant Daily Garage at yahoo.com, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. I've dealt with everything 727. I've done it all as far as messing things up. So I can tell you right now, either the flex plate was put in reversed if it was a brand new thing. If not, if it was running just fine and then it started doing this, it's 100% what Dallas was saying.
Oh, Mopar Man 1978 says, I'll have to drop my tranny and remove converter and shine a light into the hole behind the front seal to see if any. Good luck on trying to do that, dude.
Yeah, you can't do that. Just when you pull the converter off. When you pull the converter off, you'll see right on the converter tubes what it looks like. And more than likely, you're going to have to take that pump apart, because if it's rubbing anywhere inside that pump, that means that those 2 gears, because you got a sun gear, and then you have the ring gear that and how it's working. And if there's any type of anything that's hitting on that, it's going to tear it up. So you're probably losing pressure right there.
Well, so Dean Stevenson says, I love the Holly has massive follow-up. All the RFI is mostly a Ford TFI and a Corvette thing. Holly Hyperspark is their own solution to that. I'm sold on the the Hyperspark being a good distributor, because it's their design, right? They would design it to work specifically with their EFI system. I've never had any one of them. I just, like I said, go to Facebook, look up, like, I can't remember what it's called. There's a group called like Holly Sniper Group or something like that. Oh man, it's like a freaking hate group for those things. And it's nothing but horror stories on there. But the sad part is, I'll bet you for every one horror story, there's 25 good ones.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the internet goes. You know that, right? Like, everybody that's in here tonight, there's 57 people watching right now. Someone's going to leave a comment on how much of an asshat I am, or how much they don't like Shane's hair or something.
Whatever.
And that's all that anybody's going to see or talk about for the comment section, right?
Yeah.
Steven Myrick is in the house. I saw your 402 is a lot less cubic inch than that now today. We knew that at No Name Nationals, but man, your pictures, it actually has a lot more cubic inches in that one cylinder, because it uses the entire water jacket as the combustion chamber now.
That's good.
So
That's
yeah, it
good.
knocked a hole in the block into the water jacket. So
Oh wow.
yeah, I imagine that's where the wrist pin kind of was knocking. You
Ah,
know, somebody's knocking and they can't come in, that kind of thing. But let's see. Miss Elizabeth says, Shane, by far the Beaver has been my easiest classic to start out of them all.
yeah. That was the whole point of it, because it was her daily driver in San Diego. That was her car that she drove. So I had to basically be in there just a one pump and then start it up type thing. So that's why it took so long to make sure that it was right. But yeah, and I went out there. It sat for almost 3 weeks. I went out there, hit it one time, and boom, fired right up. It barely makes one rotation and it fires right up.
That's how my Suburban is, man.
Yeah,
You get them dialed in right, they run good.
yeah.
I really like to tell you the truth, I really like a carburetor startup, even cold. If you got it right, the
Mhm.
neat thing is you'll never ever wear out a starter motor on one of those things because it doesn't even make one complete revolution usually.
That's right.
Clayton's Toolbox says my bores are okay. This hypothetical: would loose lifter bores affect lifter lubrication or lifter function? Would a high volume oil pump be a good idea for a situation like that?
Well, yes and no, because yeah, a loose lifter bore is going to take out the camshaft more faster than anything. A high volume pump would possibly help because you're going to put more oil there. Still, it would likely twist
Wear
less, or
slower?
yeah, but then basically a high volume pump. The reason why I try to stay away from those is that you're going to have less wanting the lifter wanting to twist, because you're going to be basically hydraulic locking the lifter inside the bore with more pressure. So it can affect, is, I have a big theory I won't even go into about high volume pumps and camshafts going out, but yeah, I would
Man,
just bush them.
well, and that's what I was just going to say. Generally, the only fix for this is to take it to the machine shop, bore it, and bush that lifter.
Yep.
And but I guess if you were going to try to play with, let's just say hypothetically, because this is all a hypothetical question.
I see it.
Hypothetically, you were on a budget and you were trying to get 30,000 to 100,000 miles more out of this engine that has potentially loose lifter bores, right?
High
You're
volume
just trying
pump.
to get some more miles out of it so you can make it to work and back. And that way you can rebuild it on your own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Before I went to a high volume pump and I did all that work, I would probably go to like whatever oil that you're using now, like a 1030. I would probably go to like a 1540.
Yep.
And
Just thicken the oil up. Yep.
right. And I think that would cushion that lifter from moving around, but it also wouldn't potentially hydraulically hold the lifter in place.
That's right.
It's
Because
just
there's
going to
no
be a little
pressure
bit
behind it.
quicker. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's the way to go with that one, in my opinion. And I do that a lot because I take junk and run it in the ground, and that's just what I do. And and I play with oils all the time. There's times that like I will be trying something stupid out, like where I have a 530 or a 520 motor oil, and I've added a bunch of Lucas to it to try to thicken it up
Mm-hmm.
because I've been trying to get what I want. And I want lifter noise to go away or startup noise to go away, and I'll play with it till I find something that's comparable, and then I'll have just a basic idea of where I'm at, and then you go buy that motor oil. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's where I would start. Let's see. Big Block 402 says the plan on buying a new Edelbrock 4150 carb.
Yeah.
Shane says nothing but good things. So I'm assuming he's Professor P, right?
I'm telling you, I saw it in the dyno, and I saw all the testing that went into it for the past year and a half. It's an amazing carburetor. It literally, you could take a $3,000 billet carburetor, and I'm not dropping names, but they've actually tested it side by side. They literally took one carburetor off, put this carburetor on, and it made more power. And it wasn't just like more peak power, it was area under the curve. That means more torque, more
Across the board.
mid-range, more horsepower, more everything. So it's definitely a better carburetor.
If it made 5 more horse and 5 more foot-pounds of torque. What he's talking about is like, if you go watch, what's that guy's name? Holdner's videos. He'll talk about it and he'll explain it to you. He doesn't explain it in layman's terms. He just kind of rattles it off as the stuff he's already known for a long time, right? So he'll be like, oh, look at the area under the curve here. But what he's talking about is if it makes 5 more horsepower at the top end, it'll generally make 5 more horsepower across the entire power band, right?
Well, it's usually going to make more torque everywhere, because torque, horsepower is just a mathematical formula,
Of
that
torque.
it's of torque and RPM.
Yeah.
So you have to make more torque to make more horsepower in that range. You follow me? And sometimes you will trade torque for more horsepower, but torque down low. But this thing makes torque and horsepower everywhere.
And that's cool. I mean, that's what I was getting at was Holdner, he'll explain to you in a lot of those videos, something will make more horsepower and more torque, but it might be like, let's say it makes 7 foot-pounds more torque, but it'll lose 3 or 4 foot-pounds of torque below the curve before the peak torque, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, that's the one you're going to feel driving down the road.
That's right.
Is that 3 to 4 foot-pounds of torque that you lost, at a lower RPM. Let's see here. Okay. Trying to find another question. JB's Little Shop. The deplorable is in the room. Oh. Let's see. Mopar Man 1978 started repainting the faded paint areas of my 65 Plymouth Valiant dog dish hubcaps today. Oh. Well, today was not a nice day to work outside with paint. It was
it was windy here.
Was it crappy there?
It was windy.
Really?
It's been windy for the past few days. Buck
Does It is in the house. Well, I've been talking with Buck here recently. He's doing some surprise stuff to that Buick Skylark he's got. He says he's going to bring it next year at the No Name Nationals.
Nice.
Yeah, let's see. Big Block 402. My Edelbrock works great on the street, but doesn't make the power that my Holland does for racing. Yeah, for sure. That's why the Holland was the go-to carb.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to see the, the life cycle of it, watch the super stock stuff from like 63, 4, 5.
Yeah.
That's where you had the AFB carburetors came from the factory on the Hemis.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys were from Holley were working specifically with them to improve performance of those super stock cars. And it took them a few years and they finally got that thing just nailed. Junk Car Willie's in the house. What's up, Junk Car Willie? Hopefully that Riviera is treating you good. Oh, he's saying send me one. One, what? Let's see. Mopar Man 1978. A 1-inch 4-hole spacer plate does wonders under the 4 barrels for throttle response and performance.
I have to say yes and no. 4-hole, I would run like on an open plane, like a single plenum, and then I would run an open hole spacer underneath a dual plane. Usually that's how it works. You'll get a better signal with the single plane with the 4-hole, and then you'll get more plenum volume with, like, say, a dual plane. Now that's not for everything. That's just what I've seen. And as far as we were testing this on the dyno when we're doing that new carburetor, and it made worlds of difference. Just a spacer. It was amazing.
Yeah. Well, and the spacers is something that was seriously underrated for like years.
Oh, yeah.
Guys would put them on like, what are you doing with that thing? Well, one, if you buy the right spacer, first off, if you're a racer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to get every little horsepower out of the car that you can. One, like Shane was saying, if you're using a dual plane intake manifold, one side of the way the dual plane actually works, one side has a huge plenum volume and the other side has a very small plenum volume.
That's correct.
And the whole reason for that is so that the velocity is high on the small plenum volume side, creating good low end torque. Right now, if you put a spacer in there and increase the plenum volume by, say, the thickness of that spacer plus the area of how big it is, right? You'll lose some of that torque, the velocity from it, because the air has now a bigger area to move through, right? So it slows down. But the power effects of that are horrendously, like, you could butt dyno that and know to gain 10 horsepower. Right?
Yeah, if you really want to see if you have a correct carburetor, take out all your spacers and try to drive it down the street. And really, that's how you want to know if you've got a correctly tuned carburetor or not. Just take off all your spacers and put it on the dyno and drive it down the street. That's one way to tell.
Well, the other thing is the material that spacer is made out of makes a huge difference too.
Right? It does.
So if you're racing and you don't have a phenolic spacer or a wood spacer, yes, wood. There's nothing wrong with wood. It's a good insulator.
That's
right. Wood spacers are probably worth by themselves maybe 5 horsepower to 10 horsepower.
And the heat soak too. It's worth that just the heat soak.
Say is that it eliminates all that heat soak right there in the intake manifold at the base of the carburetor. When the fuel gets atomized, readily below the base of the carburetor, that temperature there is like, I bet it's like minus 10 degrees. When that fuel, after it goes to the venturi and the fuel is atomized, it's cold. It comes out of there cold.
It's cold. It's probably, maybe 15 to 20 degrees cooler than the ambient temperature.
Really? I've always thought it was really cold under there.
No, well, at least the testing that we did. Now we did it in a controlled environment, and we had sensors on everything, so it was regularly 30, 50, let's call it 20 to 30 degrees cooler underneath the carburetor.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Well, then when you take the insulator in there, like say wood or phenolic, and that drops it even more because now you don't have the heat coming up from the intake manifold.
That's right. You're not starting with hot fuel.
Yeah, and if you cut those crossovers, say you cover up them crossovers and you get aluminum intake manifold that's dissipating heat twice as fast as a cast iron piece, and then you got a wood insulator on there, that sucker is you're gaining some horsepower just by knocking down temperature, big time. And
absolutely.
And you'll find, and Shane's probably seen it, it changes the tune on the carburetor drastically.
Massively, because it's actually going to make it richer because you're going to have a denser fuel charge in it.
That's awesome. All right, so let me see if I can find.
Go to Deke.
And throw a Predator on it.
I've played with a lot of Predators. In fact, that's one of my favorite carburetors. The problem is I couldn't find any more gaskets for them, and the biggest problem I have with the Predator is when you really start cranking them up, there's not enough fuel bowl volume, and with only the single float in there, you just can't flow enough fuel. That's why you have to run two of them. I had a jet boat that I used to tune for my father-in-law, and we put twin Predators on it. It was like a 555, big block Chevrolet, and I had twin Predators on that thing, and man, it would freeze the intake manifold. It was so bitching because we're running 110 VP on it, and man, it was just, Predators are probably one of my favorite, the magic box, but they do have their limitations just with fuel delivery.
Well,
did you ever mess with one?
Don't remember, Deke is the tech guy from the AHRA.
Oh, I know exactly who he is. Yeah.
But yeah, the Predator carburetor used to be the way to go in like the early 80s.
Yeah, it's the closest to fuel injection. Yeah, you can come up.
Yeah, Fab Race Mod Repeat. That sweet Windsor sound. Yeah.
Right.
That's what makes them magic. Let's see, Dean Stevenson. So I'm trying to catch up now. We're still behind. The 4.7 swap, the bigger Ford's funny firing order does mean big single exhaust. If you can package it, sounds better. Dual exhausts sound like they're.
I think what he's saying is that because of the 4.7 swap, it might sound better with a single big single. Will it work better? All of 4.7 or you're just changing the firing order and the pulse pattern on it. So even if you just do a single exhaust or even say an X, it's still going to pull from one side to the next. It really doesn't matter. It's just basically the harmonics that are actually being in the crankshaft itself, as far as the pulse pattern that's actually hitting the crankshaft.
Right, and a lot of things that people are. Last week when we talked about this 4.723 cam swap, there was no real horsepower to be made. Shane even said that it was all about bearing wear.
That's right.
It was
harmonics.
Generally, when you're looking at longevity of the engine, that's kind of where you're at. The factory wants to have it last as long as possible so they don't have to screw with it, right?
Yeah.
But or maybe they want it to last less, and that's why they don't do the cam swap. I don't know.
Right.
But whoever you are, keep on conspiracing.
Actually, Shane, do you guys make converters for switch pitch transmissions? And is there a way to tell the standard converter from a switch pitch converter? I can tell you right now, We do not. TCI does not. And I can tell you right now, I've never seen a switch pitch personally. I've only rebuilt the trannies. You would ask Mr. Dallas for that one.
Well, there is a way to tell a switch pitch converter from a regular turbo 400 converter. You can't tell by looking down inside because it's just not, there's not enough room in there for you to see anything. It is different on the inside because the vanes on the stator are variable.
Yes.
Right. Now, the way to tell is I have a video on YouTube. I want to see, it's called like, is this true? 6-speed turbo 400. And I show you the differences. There's actually some different dimpling and weld marks on the face of that converter that aren't on a regular turbo 400 converter. And that's because it's welding some of the mechanical stuff inside of the converter itself that needs to be held in place, like the pump pistons or something. Converter is still the magic idiot round thing to me. It just works however it works. But whatever they're doing, when they weld something to the outside, it looks completely different. And I show you in the video, I hold them up side by side and I show you the comparison. It's easily identifiable. The Super Turbine 300 converter, same thing. Same converter as a Turbo 400 converter. It's interchangeable. So if it's a switch pitch ST300, it'll go right in the Super Turbine 400 or switch pitch Turbo 400, however you want to call it.
Yeah. While you're IDing it, I just went talking about it. I went on here to see if you could see, just Google to see if I could see something on it. I can't.
There's so little information on that whole transmission. That's what's kind of amazing. And someone sent me an email because I did this switch pitch. Shane hooked me up with the switch pitch Turbo 400 rebuild. I literally got this training. It took me 3 years looking for one, and I found one in Florida, and it was $150 or something, but it had been sitting for like 35 years. And when I got it, it looked like it. And I'm like, hey, Shane, can you guys do one of these? It's like, I don't know, right? Because I've never seen one. And so I took it over there, and they had it for a little while. And then he's like, calls me back. He's like, dude, this thing is just like a Turbo 400, except for it's got like a couple extra circuits and all that in it. And it makes me wonder, can you make one a 2-speed Turbo 400 a switch pitch? That's where you start talking about like drag week, those guys. I wonder if you could do that.
I don't see why not.
I don't see why not either, but you'd have to find some kind of core stuff to make.
It's so hard to find, though. That's the problem, is that you would have.
Well, so somewhat. You got to know where to look, and that's where most people don't. Chevrolet's never came with a switch pitch option. GM didn't pick up the Turbo 400 until 65. Right. It went across all lines in 65 and 64. It was a Buick only thing. And they came with switch pitch, and that's a carryover from the Dynaflow. But in 65, when it went across the entire GM line, Chevrolet never got it. But every Turbo 400 case is capable of being a switch pitch. Every single one. The
pump's
Pontiac
different, though.
Was an option. Oldsmobile was an option. And Buick, it was standard in 65, 6, and 7. And then Cadillac, it was standard 65, 6, and 7. So you find a full-size Cadillac, and when you find those in the junkyard, they'll generally have a switch pitch if it's a 65, 6, or 7.
Yeah.
Let's see. Leighton Welding says, good morning, AHRA. Well, technically it's night. So good evening, Leighton Welding. Let's see. Mid Muscle says, Holly released the Terminator X EFI kit. No more ECU mounted on the throttle body. No more problems. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. And it says that Terminator X now comes in 4150 or 4500 flange.
Wow.
All right. JB's Little Shop says, so what's the best thing you can do to make a 700R4 kick butt?
Like, define that. I mean, that's kind of open-ended. A 700R4, the inherent problem with those is the first gear. If you can fix the first gear, and I believe it's Sonex makes a 277 and a 154. That would be your first thing I would do to make a 700 R4 kick butt. That way you're not losing all that power from first to second. And then you're not really stretching the converter. You know, you're not coming right off of this multiplication and then hitting a 154 second and back on the converter. And that's what destroys these things.
Well, didn't the sun shell used to shatter in these things or something?
Everything breaks in those things. The case breaks in those things. You know, they weren't designed for what people are doing with them. You know, 700 R4, 4L60, 4L60E, they're all about the same. They all have basically same internals. Some are just electronically controlled. This is just a hydraulic controlled style with electronic solenoids. First thing I would do is if I ever did a 700 R4 personally, I would change the gear ratio first and second, and then I'll obviously get the clutches, and then whatever you can do internally, I would do. Torrington bearings, like you said, sun shell. I would just go all out with that. Absolutely, change the pump too, and make it a constant pressure.
There was like the first 7 years of that thing, because it came out like in 82 or something, right? So think about when this transmission was available. It came out in 82, but originally it was probably designed in like 78. Okay. And it was made for low horsepower, low torque, smog engines that were generally small. That's why it was behind, like, if you notice that you could get a 305 Chevy with a 700 R4, but you could also get a 2.8 in a S10 pickup with a 700 R4, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't rob a lot of power because the engines didn't make a lot of power.
That's right.
That's kind of the idea behind them. But when you don't rob a lot of power, that means you're generally inherently weak.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so the big thing is that 700, I want to say the first 7 years, there was like a major upgrades every year.
Yeah.
There was like input shaft changes and sun shell changes. And then like, I want to say it went from like a three gear in the planetary system to like a 4-gear system or a 5 even.
Yeah, pinion. Yeah,
the pinion in there, and it just kept breaking all these little things. But like Shane was saying, think about it. That's what kills transmissions is really low gearing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at, like, say, the best place to see this is like the Saginaw 4-speed. Okay. The Saginaw 4-speed was inherently weak because it had a 324 first gear, and it came behind a 305 Chevy in like a 78 or 79 Camaro. And people would hot rod that 305. The first thing they'd do is take the 305 out, throw it in the trash, put a 350 in there, a 327, and it had some snot. And then they'd spew pieces of their Saginaw all over Grand Avenue, right?
That's right.
And that's because what happens is when you multiply the torque coming out of the engine, it's just as simple as this. If you make 500 horsepower, or let's say the thing that really kills them is the torque. So let's say it makes 400 foot-pounds of torque. Mm-hmm. With the 324 gear ratio, if it was just 3 flat, you're making 1,200 foot-pounds of torque out of that input shaft. Right?
That's just the transmission gear. Now you have to go through the rear end gear.
Right, you know? Which is another, multiply that by another 4, right? Or 373 or whatever gear you got in there, and then you're looking at axle shafts being sheared off. But what happens is that 1,200 foot-pounds of torque has the ability to spread that entire case on that transmission apart when the car doesn't move as fast as the transmission case does.
That's right.
Right? Same thing happens with an automatic transmission. Exact same thing.
Yep.
The internal strength of the transmission, when you have a 306 first gear, isn't that what they have in a 700?
Yeah, 306. That's right.
It presses the case and all of the gearing assembly apart rather than move the car. It's easier to stretch the case and the gearing than it is to move that vehicle. And that's where you don't like low first gears like that.
No.
If you ever look at a granny low transmission like a SM465, right, or a ZF 5-speed like it's in my Ford F250, the case on that sucker is almost as big as the motor in the car, and that's for strength. And it's, I want to say my ZF in my 3/4 ton Ford is only rated for 470 foot-pounds of torque. And that's the only transmission that would come behind a Power Stroke diesel in like 94 or 5. You couldn't get an automatic. So
Hey, we're really far behind
I
on the
know.
questions.
All right, so let's see if I can jump up here. Okay, Aaron German says you mentioned running a B&M shifter with the A500. I have an A518 and a 92 D150 and want to use a floor shifter. Do I need a switch for overdrive and lockup?
Yes. Actually, it wasn't the B&M shifter. It's actually the B&M controller for the solenoids. If you go to one of my channel, onto my channel, and it's on the Lizard King, I have a B&M adjustable lockup converter on there. So it goes through your speedo cable. So it just takes, your mile an hour. So that way you can adjust it. You can do the exact same thing with this. So that way you'd run two. You could run one to your for your lockup and then another one for your overdrive. So you can control them independently. And that's exactly how I'm going to do this. So that way I can dial it in it makes it really, trouble free. And you can just bring it right into it and then run one more power down there. It's really simple.
Fabrice Mon repeats says, Shane, have they played with the new Edelbrock VRS carb in a twin configuration?
No comment.
Ooh, we're hitting on something heavy duty there. Let's see. If I find another question, I'm trying to fly through all this. So John Wilburn says spacers are great as long as you still get enough booster signal. Yeah, depending on what carburetor you have, right?
Yeah, that is exactly right. Yep.
Oh, you're now the wizard. Mopars,
yeah, well,
minivans. Hello, Dallas and Wizard.
They actually, what was his name? Long Beach, not Long Beach, but I'll tell you later. But yeah.
Well, Jonathan Fauci asks, question, how much horsepower would I expect to gain by going to 1.6 rockers from stock rockers on an engine?
Impossible to say. It really comes down to camshaft, speed of camshaft, and also to what your head's flow. If you can actually lose power, which I've seen this before, if your camshaft that you currently have in there, it's already upgraded cam, you're already lifting it to where maximum velocity is happening. With a 1.6 rocker, you're actually going to go to where you're actually going the wrong direction. So have you ever heard like where people say that a cylinder head is flowing the wrong direction, like it's actually getting less CFM the higher you open it up, and then it gets really noisy, and then it gets past that point, and then the velocity picks back up. I've seen on dynos where changing, not just, going from like to a 1.6, you're probably not going to see much, but people who've gone to like say 1.8 from a 1.5, and they've actually skipped over that port where they're now they have this really huge dip in the velocity in their port. You'll go the wrong direction. As far as how much you would gain, it's hard to say. You're going to gain maybe a degree and a half of camshaft duration at 50, lift usually 15 to 20 thousandths maybe. I don't know. I couldn't say. I don't want to give a number.
Well, there is no number that you could really put on. No. There's not enough information in this question to do that. No. But the trick used to be small block Chevrolet was like 1.6s on the intake and 1.55 on the exhaust or something like that. Yeah. And they would mix them up. And what you would find is it was better just to buy a half a set and then just do like whichever was the gain on for Chevrolet on your Chevrolets, right? Like I want to say it was like I think it was 1.6 on the intake and 1.5s on the exhaust. And what it did was it would force that cam to be more like a dual pattern cam. And that's where you would have the gain. But it was really, the big thing was that you were only going, 0.1 increase in rocker ratio. If it's a stock engine, you're probably not going to see much. Maybe 15 horsepower if there is a number for it. But
yeah, if you want to put a number on it.
Let's see. Dr. Art says he's seen wood spacers on my stuff. Yeah, I don't mess around. I'm all about power.
I love wood spacers too.
I like them because you can make them at home. Let's see. Fly down through here. Okay, would the wood Edelbrock half-inch spacer work with a spreadbore quadjet carburetor? If they have one that's in a spreadbore configuration, there is one I bought recently that was for a spreadbore. I put a 350 Buick in a 63 Buick LeSabre. The guy somebody had taken out the 401 nailhead, which in my opinion was probably the better of the engines, but The 350 is a good engine. So, but I couldn't get the carburetor to work with his linkage set up without having to put a spacer underneath the carburetor. And I want to say it was a 1/2-inch wood spacer under there, and it worked just great.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mopars, Mustangs, and minivans. I feel like this 360 is going to be mighty spiffy.
Yeah. He came by this weekend, him and his mom, Colleen. I gave him that engine. Actually, he picked up a 360 Magnum. So I gave him a 360 for it and talked to him about camshafts and whatnot as far as how to make this thing actually outrun my Slant 6.
Well, hopefully it happens, because I'd hate to
Yeah.
see 360 cubes get munched all up by 225 Slant 6.
Yeah. And what he's going to do too is he's going to send me his camshaft to me, and I'm going to just pop a regrind on it and see what I can get from him.
Well, Frank Parks says, Shane, for cleaning our vintage instrument circuit boards, phosphoric acid. A gallon at Home Depot sold as concrete and metal etch cost $20. No scrubbing, just brush it on and water rinse off.
I was using just alcohol and Q-tips, and then basically once I cleaned them off, then I just put some flux on it and then soldered it. So that's how I did it. But I'll try that next time. I mean, for real, because it was a pain in the butt. Thank you, Frank, for that. I appreciate it.
Let's see. Let's see if I can find another question further down. I need to catch up here. I'm falling way too far behind. Tom Brown says, Shane, would you ever take the Lizard to the Silver State Classic open road race?
Absolutely. In fact, thank you for asking that, because I'm telling you right now, there is plans that, as I build this thing, this is going to be, the whole idea is Slant Daily Garage. So it has to be driven slant daily. So the next thing is going to be the A500. So I'm going to have a 355 gear and it's going to help out. Then it's going to go fuel injection. And then eventually it is going to have a power adder, and it's going to be a free horsepower, essentially, type of jet engine style of power adder. So that would be a turbo. And
I'm just going to come out and say it. It's going to be a turbo.
It's going to be a turbo. but it's going to be a small one. I don't want something that I have to rev to 6,000 RPM. I want this thing to come in at about 2,000 RPM or even 1,500. So that way it's just right off idle. I want it all over with by 5,000. I basically want that.
You seen a stock turbo off of a Grand National.
Yeah, I was looking at that, or the Ford Mercure. Remember those?
Ford the 2.3 Fords.
Yeah. So I want something that's a little smaller because I want it to come up really fast. I mean, I've seen people run the whole set 35s, and that's just too much. It's way too big for what I'm looking for.
So Dean Stevenson says, I spent 120,000 miles behind a rear drive turbo hydromatic 700R Ford GM 3800 Holden Commodore. Great trans. I'm with you, Shane P. A narrower ratio spread like 277 to 70 is greater than 306 low. I think if they were to take the same gearing as like a 204R,
yep,
there you go. That's what you need.
Yep, and Sonex does make it, and they have that gear set for it. Yeah, and it's 1,000 horsepower capable, so it's really a great setup.
Well, is it 0.67 overdrive, or is it still this 0.76?
I'm not sure what the overdrive is. I think it's still the standard overdrive, because it just changes the first and second gear, because the first and second were on the same ring and pinion sun gear.
Okay. Clayton's Toolbox. I have a nice Close small block Ford timing chain. Oh, Chloe's. Okay. Double roller, the same type I used in other builds. This new chain seems loose. I wonder if I should find a different chain or just use it.
You know, sometimes that happens. Did you have your engine line honed?
That's the big one. Yep.
If it was line honed,
out of it right there.
Yep. And then they sell under chains just for that.
Yeah. If you did line hone that, all you do is you find it's generally the same part number, but it'll have a different number at the end. You know, it'll be like 005 or 5 or whatever. But if you had it line honed, say they took 5 thousandths out, you need to find a chain that has 5 thousandths out of it, right? Let's see. Aaron Germanson is on. What is Shane's channel called?
Slant Daily Garage.
Slant Daily.
Yeah.
Okay, so We're getting caught up here. Jonathan Couchy, okay, for the 1.6 rocker question from before, cam was 506 lift, will be 539 lift with 1.6 heads are ported intake and headers. Stock rockers are more like 145.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, a lot of cam manufacturers, I can tell you, I was with another company before being with Edelbrock that has comp. We used to make the rockers actually like say 162 and 163. So that way, by the time you factor in deflection and so on and so forth, the 35 thousandths that you just gained with that 1.6 rocker arm, you're actually going to lose in running as far as flex on the push rod. It's basically your dynamics on your running dynamics that you're going to lose. So you'd basically just bring it right back up to the 6, let's call it 506 or 515 as far as lift. As far as putting a number on it, it's still hard to say. I really I have a hard time putting a number on it, but you're going to gain something. But would it be worth the 1.6 rocker arm? Probably not. I would change the 1.6 rocker arm with a camshaft that has a faster, because you're not really going to see the power at max lift. This is the one misconception. You actually see the power gain at the 300 lift mark. How fast you can get the camshaft to 300 lift is, I should say, the valve to 300 lift, and how long you can hold it there above that until it closes, because that's where your highest velocity is going to be. You want to keep the maximum area under the curve as far as the amount of lift. And that's actually what I did with this Buick cam. Is the same thing. Is I was able to put a much faster ramp rate on the camshaft, so that way you get it off the seat, get the valve off the seat, get the head flowing. Then you put the 1.6 rocker on, which is just going to extrapolate that. It's just going to make it that much faster. So that way you can just have more area under the curve as far as how much air the engine can actually, I would say pump, but essentially can pump, because these are just air pumps that just happen to have a big bang and they push out the exhaust. So the more fuel you can put in there, the more spent, exhaust you can get out, the more power you're going to make. So I would save the 1.6s, and put it with a camshaft, and get a camshaft that's designed to take advantage of the 1.6 rock arms. That's what I would do.
Oh, well, Dean Stevenson says, practice saying that in your dirty, hairy voice. She was asking for it, so I gave him the Magnum LA treatment word. Do I feel lucky? Let's see here. I don't know what this is kind of directed at. Is this directed at the Slant 6, giving the 360 some beans? I don't know.
Yeah, because what he's talking about is the M3, because the BMW is essentially a Slant 6.
Oh, really? Oh, I
Yeah.
did not know that.
Yeah, it's slanted.
It's a dual red cam Slant 6?
Yeah, it's basically everything that you want to do with the Slant 6, the M3's already got it. So that's what he's talking about.
So Mopar, Mustangs, and minivans. I got to get back to work. Amazing conversation. Thanks, guys. No problem. Have fun at work, buddy.
Take it easy, Damien. Good seeing you.
So Aaron Germanson says he's subscribed. Looking forward to the video with the B&M shifter. Let's see. Tom Brown, is that 430 cam a 4732 swap design? No,
because
it
was a factory
572. Yeah,
it was a factory camshaft that was a regrind on it. But if you're really interested in this, Tom, the camshaft that I designed for my Desert Dart, which is going to be, it's a Gen 3 Hemi. It does have a 4732 swap on it. The headers were designed just for that. And the ignition system I'm going to be running with it will allow that. So it's going to sound different. It's going to have it's going to be an X pattern on it as far as the exhaust, and it's going to have it's going to have boom tubes on it. But I'm looking for that race car exhaust. Plus, there's really nowhere for my exhaust to go, because it's got a triangular 4 links, but it will have a 4732 swap on it.
Man, it sounds like a small block Ford.
Basically, that's what an LS is.
Andy is in the house. Valve trains can deflect a ton. Yeah, I'm sure they can. Let's see. 2011 is when I had the motor put together for my T-Bird, and I was going on deployment, and I had saved all these parts up for like 10 years. And so I ended up taking to a guy that specializes in cleaver Fords, and I could have done it myself, but I just didn't have time. I was deploying. I literally was like leaving within a couple of days of arriving in the States at a new duty station. So there was a guy that was running Engine Masters before it was a YouTube show or anything like that. There used to be a magazine called Engine Masters where they had these engine builders from all over the country build these engines and compete on I guess it'd be a world-class level, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the guys in there was doing cleavers. Is the guy that did my cleaver, put mine together. His name was Tim Zepp, and he was in New Jersey. And you can look him up. And when I showed up there and dropped all these parts off, he was like ooh and ahhing on some of these old NASCAR pieces I picked up and stuff. But he showed me this push rod, and it was like a 7/16 chromoly push rod, and it was blue in the center, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what do you think that's from? And I'm like looking at it like, man, it's almost directly in the center of the push rod. So that would tell me that it's probably has to do with resonance from the valve opening and closing at a certain rate of speed, right?
That's right.
And I was like, if you take the length of that push rod and divide it by, because if you ever figured out how RF works, the wavelength of the radio frequency, the antenna has to be a minimum of half the length.
That's right.
So if you're listening just to acoustics, generally when you're looking at RPM of an engine, you're looking at almost acoustics, but they all kind of fall in the same wavelength. RF, acoustics, all that stuff. But if you measure the length of that push rod, half of that would be essentially what kind of RPM you're turning with that engine, that frequency that valve is operating at. And I'll bet you that's what you'll find is that length of that push rod is harmonically resonant to the frequency that you're operating the engine at, right? And that's where it's building heat right there, because it's deflecting the push rod at its resonant frequency. And he was like, who the hell do you work for again? And I'm like, I just am in the Navy. And he was kind of impressed, but I had never seen a push rod that blued like that in the middle before. And
yeah, I've actually I've actually seen it before, and it was coming from a camshaft that was a little too, as far as the ramp rate on them. It really happens on what they used to call cut nose cams. You ever seen those on short track cars? So they have a lift rule. So like say they have a 425 lift rule, but they can run all the duration they want. So essentially the cam low literally goes up, stays flat, and then comes back down. And so what they're trying to do is that they'll get a really soft style of push rod. So they'll essentially loft it and they'll set their spring up. So 50 thousandths, like they'll have like say 200 thousandths extra before coil bind. So they'll basically use the push rod as a pole vault. So when it comes over that lobe, it basically pole vaults. So then it takes that and it shoots that valve open, and as far as the push rod pushing it open. And so basically in the center, that is obviously the weakest point because you're the farthest in the center, right? As far as where the push rod's at. So that's where it's going to pick up the most of basically the resonance and the harmonics and the frequencies is going to be right there. And all the heat is going to be right there. And technically, it's just the weakest parts is where you're going to start to work the steel.
Yeah, it's just getting work hardened right there in the center.
Exactly. And so that I've seen it quite a bit with that. And a lot of the stock classes like the B stock and the A stock, they have a lift rule on that, and they do the exact same thing. Is they'll basically will loft the valve and basically shoot it basically up to coil bind, use the coil bind so that way as a valve stop, let's put it.
Right.
And then they use
it just can't go open any further because the spring won't allow it.
Yeah, and then they use basically the piston to push the exhaust valve back closed.
Oh God, it's got to be hard on parts if you get it out of time.
Yeah, so
it's like everything's crunched.
You're doing it right when they would take the cylinder head off, and then they would see the outline of the exhaust valve in the exhaust, in the piston. You can actually see it in the carbon, the outline of the valve. That means it was perfect.
Huh?
Yeah,
that's pretty badass. Let's see, Jonathan Couchy. Okay, I was going to say this is a junkyard motor. I'm saving up for a 408 roller block 360 build, and would just swap over the 1.6 rockers to that engine on it when it was built. Well,
okay.
So what Shane's telling you is when you do that, get a camshaft that's made for those 1.6 rockers, and you'll find a serious gain in power there.
Yeah, and also too, those Magnums, they came with 1.7s also, and
Smaller.
Yeah, and then you could even change them out, and then they have a kit now where you can run Chevrolet style rocker arms, so you can actually run like say a Chevy 175 or even a 1.8 or whatever. So that way you can start playing with rock arms, so you can get cheap rock arms, start playing with ones on the intake and the exhaust, because it does make a difference. It's going to definitely change your torque curve by putting like say 1.7s on the intake and 1.6s on the exhaust.
I just look at it as it's like making a dual pattern cam, right? Or it makes it more of a dual pattern. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because you're going to lose a lot of power on the exhaust side because you're opening against spring pressure and cylinder pressure. So that's what's really hard on the valve train. So that's why you're going to have more duration, but remember, you don't really need the lift as much on the exhaust because it's going to be coming out basically under massive pressure. So you're just trying to opening up the duration to get it out. Where you want the lift is on the intake side, because you're essentially just creating a low pressure zone, and the atmosphere is pushing the air in, the outside air. So that's why you always go with as much duration as you can on the intake, and that's where it's going to really set it up. And you'll notice that too as far as the lift. That's where the biggest amount of getting the valve off the seat, staying in that happy area where you're trying to get the valve over 300 thousandths and then getting that high velocity in there. And you'll really see it on the upper RPMs.
Huh. Oh man, let's see. Let's see. I don't know what this is about. Maybe that's where I was talking about that blue push rod.
Therium?
Yeah, therium.
Thorium?
Let's see. Yeah, push rods turn into pole vaults.
It's true.
That's something that's been around a while. See, I didn't know there was such a thing as lofting the cam.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a thing. That actually is that was, for the longest time, that's what they've been doing.
Well, Jonathan Couchy says, Shane, do you have a good brand of push rods to get that you have used on a small block Mopar?
Trend is it's inexpensive and they work really good. And we use them. Every company I've worked for uses Trend. So yes, Trend is a great, as far as over the counter type of push rod. I actually have them in all my engines right now are Trend push rods.
Oh, that's funny, because in my What If 300 Buick, guess what push rods I used?
Trend.
But generally anything I used before that was Smith Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
But those are high-end push rods.
Yes.
And you get what you pay for.
It's true.
Man, when you get them off by 10,000, so you got to order a new set of push rods, and you got these Smith Brothers paperweights over there.
And for what I'm building, I'm not trying to build every little horsepower. I'll give up 20 or 30 horse. I don't care. I just want to make myself happy, right? So I won't care about that.
Dean Stevenson says Dick Johnson in '85 used a square profile roller cam in his Group A Mustang Fox 5.0 in Australia.
Yeah, they actually call those really inverted radius is actually what they're called. Technically, some people had different names for them, but instead of it opening up like this, they actually were inverted like this. So it was an inverted radius. So it would hit the wheel and essentially it would open up incredible. Yes, but they are incredibly violent on valve train.
Yeah, I figured so. When your bolt pull out of your rockers, that's what it's from right there. When you hit the bump stop. My old man ran a camshaft from Lanati in a big block Buick back in the late 70s that had square lobes on it. It was literally and it was just a solid flat tappet cam, but it was virtually almost like a square.
Really?
Yeah. But the same thing. It wrecked valve train. It wrecked push rods and a couple of sets of lifters.
Yeah,
but it did run good. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat. Shane, we used to see the mark on the head as well, where the piston just did touch.
That's correct. That means it was set up perfectly. That means that you made all the horsepowers that you could out of it.
But Tony used to say the same thing. If the piston's not touching the head, you're leaving some on the table.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because if you think about it, in theory, that's almost 100% right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I check for piston rock when I build engines, but I keep my tight squinch, and my race cars just for that reason. If you can see a mark, like if there's just a little tiny outline, that means it was absolutely perfect.
Huh. Well, in this Buick, the super stock motor I did was the first Buick that I've ever had the piston out of the hole, right? And I got a 40 thousandths head gasket, and the piston was out by 20 thousandths, so it had 20 thousandths, essentially a quench. But all the heads are open chamber, so I don't think that really there's no quench pad there. So is it even beneficial at that point?
Were you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
That's the first one
I
I've ever
lost.
done out of the hole like that before.
I'm sorry. I lost hearing here for my mic went off or something went off there. What were you saying? Say it one more time, please.
The super stock Buick was the only one that I've ever had where the piston was out of the hole, and it was 20 thousandths out of the hole with a 40 thousandths head gasket, which would leave you 20 thousandths of quench, right?
Yeah.
But the heads are open chamber; they don't have a quench pad.
Yeah.
So are you gaining anything by doing that, or does it really matter at that point?
Well, it comes down to combustion chamber then, because that would be more like a Hemi then, because a Hemi's got the same type of thing, doesn't have a quench pad.
Right.
Essentially, it's just basically it's a dome quench, and same with the early nail heads were like that too.
Right. And this small block is like that. They're all the same way. There's a pent roof design like a nail head.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, but I just know that in the Mopar world, in the small block Chevrolets, which are about the same, you're looking for every little bit as far as getting the quench. You want to just squish it up as tight as possible to get as much bang out of that thing as possible when you're dealing with a crappy head.
Yeah. Oh, I know. All right. So Blaze Garage says I picked up a 75 350 Chevy truck motor, has 882 heads. How much power can I get out of those heads?
I've made 500 horse with 882 heads pretty easily. I'm
trying to think what 882 is.
That's the style
large chamber, big valve ones.
Yeah, I think they got hardened seats in them too. They're a very common head to find. They're like in the top, like, I don't know, maybe 20 heads or whatever that are good. They're still kind of a smogger head in the big scheme of things. They're not really classified as a performance bitching head, but you can make them work. But nowadays, to get those heads, with 202 valves and 160 exhaust on them, it'd be so much work. It would just be easier just to buy some aluminum, heads at this point, because you could just then you can go up another point in compression and you have your 202 160, and then now you're really going to leave those things.
Right, they would run all over those 882s after all that work.
Yep.
The 882 though it's from the same generation, same era as the Turbofire head, it's a small style head too, and those are the ones everybody ran on modified cars.
I'm not sure of the years, and someone will correct me on this, but 882 I believe was in the 70s. It was like a late 70s style head, early 80s, I believe.
Yeah. I'm not your Mr. Chevrolet guy.
No, nor am I. I only is by default because that's what pays the bills, buildings, Chevrolet engines.
I just walk past them on purpose because people would always want money for them.
Yeah.
And it's like, Chevrolet small block, $200, 200 Buick small blocks, $0. Okay, yeah, I know.
Slant 6. I'll give it to you.
Yes. Tom Brown says that. Now, never did get to ask, since Shane opened the cam box, who got to open the first beer with the little forged opener?
Not me.
I did.
Yeah, he did. I did that on purpose. I even told him, I was like, hey, man, there's a really nice little forged opener in here. And then he's like, dude, make sure I get that. I was like, okay, no problem. I literally left it in my top drawer of my desk, and then when I gave him the camshaft, I put it right back in there. So that would have been you, Mr. Dallas.
Well, here's what I did with it. I actually fixed it to a lanyard and stuck it inside my refrigerator. So when you have a bottle of beer that you got to open, the door is already open right there with his forged beer bottle opener attached to the lanyard, so you can just crack it right there.
Yep,
you don't have to go look around for anything. But I do appreciate that, Tom. I'm going to have a new Mr. Rotter's Neighborhood video coming out here probably tomorrow. Well, it won't be tomorrow because I got to deliver that engine tomorrow. But the It'll probably be the day after. So Friday. Is that right? Yeah, Friday. God, this week has gone by so fast. Okay.
I know. Tell me about it.
Dean Stevenson says lots of 82 heads don't put much spin on the mixture and have poor exhaust flow.
It's true.
But having the right cam to suit them makes the 82s a fine choice.
Exactly.
Well,
It's
and
true.
here's something interesting. If you go look, and Andy is the protege for a guy named Mr. David Vazard. Okay. And David is the dude when it comes to making stuff run good. He had said that if you have poor exhaust flow, and there's nothing that you can really do about it, the easy thing to do is up the compression, because then the compression will force the exhaust out.
Yeah, the bang will.
Right.
Yeah. And camshaft, you can fix with camshaft too.
Yeah. But I just thought that was interesting because I am of that lifestyle. I run Buick junk, and they all have poor exhaust flow and poor intake flow.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to find ways around this stuff. Let's see. Okay. Fab Race Mom Repeat Dallas. Remember the Pistons going to grow a few thousandths. At the least, it did add some compression.
It's true. Yeah. And it'll grow too with just a little bit of stretch on them. Yeah.
All right. Well, isn't it? And that's just for moving back and forth and getting the heat, right? So
yeah, exactly. When the piston expands. Also, too, depending on what RPM, I did a lot with crankshafts before, and when you have a crankshaft that's a really lightweight crankshaft, it's going to want to flex a little. So you're going to have flex there. You're going to have a little bit of rod stretch, because the rod bolts are going to stretch a little bit, and then you're going to have piston grow. So you can use all that to gain more compression also too, and getting as close to that cylinder head as possible. I did a lot of that stuff with the circle track guys.
Well, they're fighting for every single thing they can get, right? Especially
Absolutely.
when they got all these crazy limited rules.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Couchy. So Shane, what are you saying? What you were saying for Mopar heads is to get the EQ Magnum with LA bolt pattern, then get the Chevy kit with the 1.8 rockers and have them worked over with a good valve job.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would just get the EQ Magnum heads, run an LA block, or even if you can find a Magnum block. They're so easy now to find. And then that way you already have a really nice setup for like a hydraulic roller camshaft. And then, you're kind of limited as far as valve lift to 340 thousandths on, say, a Magnum style block. I mean, you can play with different base circles and whatnot as far as your dog bones, but 340 lift, but then you change the rocker arm ratio on that. And then now you've got all your head flow back. You can get 600 thousandths lift easily out of something like that.
So Blaze Garage is saying, I'm planning on leaving the 184 valves for a work truck. Hey, to tell you the truth, that head, if it has poor exhaust flow and fairly small valves, is going to be awesome for a tow rig or a
absolutely high
truck.
velocity.
Yeah, the velocity is going to be insane. So that's actually a really good choice for that truck. Let's see. Backwoods Custom Crap says, tonight is my first time on this channel. This is the place for knowledge. Thank you. Well, you're welcome.
Yeah,
I'm glad you liked it, and I'm glad we delivered for you.
Yeah, we're actually real guys. We really do this stuff. We're not just, some guy who's got, 100,000 people on Facebook that doesn't, or whatever it is. We actually do this. I do this for a living, and he does it for a living also. So yes.
Well, Mayhem Motorsports, awesome content, fellas. I'm building a Slant 6 for mid-80s short box Dodge pickup. Wondering about what heads, intake, cam, etc. Daily driver deal. Thanks.
Oh,
well, you're going to be stuck with the one head, as far as I know.
Yeah, well. There's actually there's kind of like two. You have what they call the drool tube, which is like the early style, and then which is like the 13/16 style of plug, and then you have the 5/8 style plug, which is like a later one, which is going to have the hardened seats.
Right.
Either they flow the same. I've flowed all of them. They're within a couple CFM. What I would do to that cylinder head is, you can do this at your house, is take those valves out, back cut the intake and the exhaust valve. You're going to see a massive lump right on it. Then just get out a nice little wheel die grinder with some just sandpaper, and just clean the bowl up, and then clean the port out, and you'll go from like 140 CFM to like 160 something, 170 CFM just by doing that. You got to be really careful when you cut that back cut on that valve. And then I've done this so many times on my bench. I just get a drill, a 3/8 hose, and some polishing compound for valves. And I just turn the drill on, and then I just cut the valve one direction and go back the other, kind of look at where it's at, and then clean it up, and then that's my valve job. I mean, I know it is what it is, but it works great on the Slant 6 because there's really no RPM on them. And then as far as intake, I like the Offenhauser because it's readily plentiful. If you're going to run a 4-barrel, if you're going to run a 2-barrel, then try to get yourself a Super 6 style of intake. I might actually have one. SlantDailyGarage@yahoo.com. Once again, that's SlantDailyGarage@yahoo.com. And then I have a page called Slant Daily Garage, obviously. And as far as a camshaft, something in the 215 to 220 duration on at 50, 110 to 112 LSA. I run them really tight because I want my power right now. But other than that, that's really it. And you can run a factory exhaust. I had a stock style intake, and I just poured it out the tube and then went 2.5 all the way back, and that ran great for a long time. So you can do that. And I drove that thing across the country twice, I think, like that. So that's a great setup.
Well, if you're getting 40 or if you're getting 20 CFM out of that, that's easy 40 horsepower.
Yeah, that's
how I went bowls by blending the bowls and then back cutting the valves. That's 40 horse
easily. Yeah,
because
right?
What is that on that engine? That's got to be like 30% improvement.
Well, it goes from like 140 to like 180 horsepower to 200 horse in that range. Now, between camshaft, your timing, and carburation, you can gain that 100, 200, 210 mark. To get higher than that, it really takes away the daily driver part of it. 200 to 210
right,
is,
yeah.
You know what I mean? It really,
I got you. That you've crested the bubble at that point.
Yeah, I'm at that point with my camshaft and my setup. If it wasn't just me, for someone else, probably wouldn't be the best daily driver. But for me, I don't mind dealing with that kind of stuff. But it just really is where you draw the line of daily driver. Because I mean, we've seen street outlaws. They consider a street car. I wouldn't consider a street car. So,
well, Watzonda 2B says, Shane, do you have any slant valve cover girdles left? And what do you think of the Chrysler Garrett T03 used in the 2.2 liter turbo Dodge cars for a Slant 6 application?
I'm looking at that one also. That's funny you say that. The thing about those ones is that they spin out a little fast. Now, Slant 6 is what, like a 3.9 liter, 3.7 liter. So it might be just a little much for that. What I'm really trying to do is that right now I'm looking at fuel flow so I can get my brake specific, and that way I can get a turbo that has the right mapping for what I'm trying to do as far as where I want the power band to be. And then I could just, exactly. Because like I said, I could just put whatever I want on it, but then I would just have this I'm not looking for that. I want something that comes on right away. So that way I can hit the stall converter, I can get it up on the stall, and it's on the pop, it's on the turbo right away, and then that way I can carry it out. And at 5,000, it'll RPM higher, but there's just nothing there. Even with a turbo, it's going to be hard.
Well, you're trying to size it to work pretty much with the same characteristics of the regular Slant 6 anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So and I want to keep that daily
enough where you can drive it.
As a daily driver. Yeah, because like we went to the No Name Nationals, like I was saying last week, is that every trip I was going down the drag strip, I considered that a freeway on ramp. So, that's basically me getting a green light and getting onto the freeway. It was basically that was me doing that, So I could make lap after lap. I don't care.
Larry Jeffers Freeway. So let's see here. Tom Brown, is there any certain combos that an exhaust style crankcase vent works better than a regular PCV?
Certain combos of exhaust.
Yeah. Style? Okay. Exhaust style crankcase vent. I think he's talking about
like an evac system.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, those combos would be small, thin rings, not like your Napiers, like on the LSs, because they're actually designed to be that thin, that small, right? Mm-hmm. But if you were to use, like, let's say, a race style ring, like a 1/16 race style ring on the street, you would probably see what would be better is probably a vacuum pump
Vacuum pump, yeah.
But since you're not talking about the vacuum pump here, that's where the exhaust style crankcase vent would probably work better than regular PCV, because you couldn't pull enough vacuum through that to seal them rings up
No,
through a PCV.
I have that exhaust style on my car, and then it works. It works okay. You can, when you're idling it all the way up to about, say, 4,000, it really doesn't do much. But after 4,000 RPM, you can actually feel it. It'll suck your hand right to the hose. So it does a decent job at that.
Well, in the sailor community, we call that an inductor. That's an inductor. It just creates it's velocity that creates a suction.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
I call it Bernoulli's principle.
Well, that's probably what it comes from. I never learned of it or even saw it in my entire life until I saw it on a ship, and they were like, "Go light off the inductor," and I'm like, "What's that?" Yeah, we turn this valve and open that one and run this, and then you create suction, and then you open that valve, and it probably is Brunelles's principle, huh?
Go back up to Wada Zana Ba 2B, the one right above it.
This one here?
Yeah, I forgot to mention. If you go to Slant Daily Garage at yahoo.com, they're like $40, and then whatever shipping is. But yeah, I do have some more of those. We actually made another order for those things.
Oh, you did? You already got some in?
We got them. We sold out. We sold most of them out. I think we've got like maybe one left or two left, and then I already placed an order for more coming, because they're really popular. They work awesome. They amazing. I put one on the wife's car, and it literally, her car was leaving tracks of oil, and I got up underneath there and it was completely wet. I put that on it. Now it's dry. So it works good.
Oh, well, that's good. And that's the whole point of doing something like that. You want to see it better than it was before, right?
Yeah. It's cheap and it's easy and it works.
Let's see. All right. Well, if you guys haven't went and smashed that like button yet, go back and smash that like button for us, because that's the only way that we get recognized here on YouTube is this like button, or give us the middle finger button, or the like or don't like or whatever. But that's the only way that YouTube kind of recognizes you. So Blaze Garage says, what would be a good cam choice for the 350? The truck is a 72 Chevy K20, 455 gears, 5-speed NV 4500. Oh, that's actually a good drivetrain combo.
Yeah, that's good. I would stay something, obviously you're going to want something because of the gear ratio, the 5-speed and whatnot. I wouldn't go crazy on the cam. Everyone always over cams. And if you're picking between two camshafts, pick the smaller of the two camshafts every single time. You'll be much happier. As far as from the limited information I have here, I would be somewhere in the 212 to 220. 220 might be a little much, but in the two teens somewhere. But
that would be like the standard RV camshaft, right?
Yeah, because that's what you want. You want the torque and you want the mid-range. You don't care
want
about
that velocity on those valves at lowest RPM possible.
Yeah, and don't go too crazy on the LSA. But if you're keeping the duration, at 50, say like 215, you could even put a 110 LSA in that thing, and that would actually allow it to make the velocity that it needs and the instant torque. You wouldn't have to go with the wide LSA, so that way, a wider LSA would give you a broader power band. But for a truck, you're just looking for that really low end and that mid range, and then you'll have some over rev on it. But somewhere in the 215, let's call it 110. But LSA. As far as lift, I think what those 72, you could probably go like say 450 to 480. I think is what's decent on one of those that you can go with, get away with it. So pretty simple.
Well, so the Mitsu turbocharger, the Mitsubishi's used on 2.5 liters, is smaller than the Garrett T03, and it would spool fast for quick torque.
That's exactly what I'm looking for. Yep. I've been looking at turbos, and I've got a whole family of people looking for this kind of stuff as far as how to map this. But but that's exactly what I'm looking for. Something that's going to spool up quick and just carry it out just far enough. But remember, I'm dealing with about a whole liter more than what that turbo is sized for. So it's going to bring everything down 1,000 RPM.
Well, you remember that when we first started talking about this, the idea was, remember I brought up the 4BT, get the turbo off the 4BT.
Yeah.
Because what is that thing? Like, I want to say it's like 3.5 liters or something like that.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's same. It's the same thing as I've already been looking at it, but see, they make so many. The 4BT is so popular now that turbo
There's
is
a million
super.
aftermarket ones.
Yeah, exactly. But just to get a factory one, now, or even one they're so expensive now because it's such a popular engine.
Yeah, and I'm kind of running into that problem because I'm going to turbocharge that 350 Buick. The idea was to get an HX35 of a Cummins, and there's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah.
There's like you just type in HX35, you'll have like a bajillion turbos show up, and I'll bet you half the bajillion are not even whole set HX35s. That's the problem, is like, it's an HX35 replacement, but it's bigger and it's got a better wheel in it, and you're like, I don't want anything like that. I'm trying to keep this thing in its optimal RPM band, which is like 1800 to 5200. I don't want to change the cam. I'm lazy and I'm cheap, and I'm just going to put, the stock cam in it with a better set of springs, and that's all it's going to get.
Yeah.
So, let's see. And I'm just like you. I'm like the very conservative camshaft guy because it's easy to over camshaft.
Absolutely.
Right? It's so easy. But what you find is if you improve the head flow, the head is where it's at, right? You could leave a stock cam in something, and that cam power band is going to get broader and broader the bigger the airflow is on that cylinder head.
And that's the reason with my Gen 3 Hemi, I went with a really conservative cam for that. I mean, it's big in the big scheme of things. It's 229 duration at 50. It's a 235 duration at 50 on the exhaust, and it's on a 110 LSA. But the heads flow almost 400 CFM on a 6.1 liter engine. So it's going to have power for days across the board. And Hemis love overlap. They feed on that. You can't give them enough. They just love it.
Yeah. Well, that's the same way that Buicks are. And it's got to be because of that pent roof design is similar to like a hemispherical head.
Yeah.
Jonathan Couchy says, at Blaze Garage, honestly, the Comp XE256H is an amazing instant torque cam. My brother owns a 92 D250 with an NV4500 and 456 gears.
You want to know the specs on it? I'll tell you the specs. The specs on that are 212, 218, duration at 50 on a 110 LSA.
Oh, so exactly like what you were saying. So that probably is an ideal camshaft for what you're
exactly. So yes, Jonathan, you are absolutely correct. That cam is absolutely perfect for that because it works amazingly perfect for what it's set up for.
Well, let's see here. Dean Stevenson. In New Zealand, with those heads, we tried to bump the compression ratio up to 9.5 to 1 and use the 290 at Lash hydraulic cam with 228 degree duration at 50 with 5 degrees extra lift on exhaust. I imagine he's talking about those 882 heads, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Lash exhaust.
Man, Doug Narden just showed up. We only got about 28 minutes left. Let's see here. It might be less than that.
Yeah. Doug. There's actually a physics joke in here. Yes.
Yeah, well, that one right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
Dean Stevenson says Brunelli's theory sucks, but it works great every time.
Yeah, that's right. It's good. That's funny. And that's a good physics joke. I like that.
Dallas, are you going to make any more 215 to 300 intake adapters? I am. Okay, so when I originally pioneered those things, and I'll give you the straight skinny on it, okay? When I originally pioneered those things, it was for Jack the Giant Killer, and I thought, well, if I'm going through all the effort to do that for this one engine, why don't I just make them for a bunch? So then I took them to 3 different companies, and they just sat, and nobody made anything for me, and nobody actually freaking threw me any products, or even because I had it all converted to a CAD design. And so it was real simple. All you had to do was put it in your CNC machine and poop these things out like left and right. Didn't happen. So I guess 2 weeks or a week before the No Name Nationals, which was the end of September, the beginning of October, there was a trade show here in Nashville. And I went to it, and it was nothing but stuff like this. So I found a company in Cookeville, Tennessee, and I also found one in Smyrna, Tennessee, that they were both eager to make these for me. So since the No Name Nationals, I haven't had much time because October was the heftiest month for the AHRA this year. I essentially had an event every weekend until the end of October. This weekend is the first weekend I don't have one, and then I have one the next weekend. So, but that's the last one of the year for the last event for the last track this year. And so now I can get back onto, I can get these spacers made. I'd love to have them made because I hate that there's so few intake manifolds available for that 300. And I like the idea of being able to just grab like the Edelbrock piece off the shelf and throw it right at a 300. That makes the most sense. But I am getting back on them. Let's see here. Let's see. Jody Pearson says, can't go wrong with a comp high energy 268H. You can if you're looking for a truck application.
It's not much bigger. Once again, I don't have all these specs memorized, and I apologize for all that. But you are correct in one aspect of that. But once you get to the 224 duration at 50, once you cross that 220 mark, you're gonna have problems as far as just getting the mid-range, the low-end torque. It's gonna be a little stumbly, and you're gonna have a lot of overlap, and it's gonna have all that boogity sound because it's still on a 110 LSA, so your overlap triangle is gonna be much greater. So I would, if it's for a truck, I would go with the smaller one. That's just my opinion.
This is a great cam for. And there's nothing wrong with this cam, okay?
No, it's great.
Yeah. I have put 2 of these in big block Buicks, but this thing's magic for like a streetcar application,
exactly,
like a performance streetcar application.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's for, and it's for something that's 3,800 pounds or less. You're trying to make some horsepower, stuff like that. Truck is something that's completely different.
Add 1,000 pounds and make everything longer,
right? And still you want to. And here's the problem: is if you were to put this camshaft in a truck, you'd probably see 6 miles to the gallon. I don't doubt, because it'd be working this motor really hard, and you don't drive it up in that power band that this thing would make all of its amazing power. Right? It worked great in a street application and performance street application. But the truck, not good. You'd be broke. It would eat you out of house and home probably. Let's see. Danny Boyd wants to know is the 4BT 4 cylinders? Yes, that's the 4-cylinder Cummins.
Yep, and I believe it's 3.9 liters, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's something like that. It is
3.9.
No, that's right. It's actually the way I look at it is this. Every one of those cylinders is essentially 1 liter, right, on a Cummins.
Yeah.
Well, I look at them. But the 4BT is 4 cylinders of the 6BT, which the 6BT was the first Cummins engine in the Dodge trucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you ever look at them, each cylinder is separate. And the way that Cummins really got ahead of the game was all the parts were the same.
Yeah, exactly. Right? These had more cylinders.
Yeah, and it was just genius. I mean, I don't know if there's an 8BT or a 10BT, but I would like to see them if there is.
And a 225 comes out to be 3.687 liters. So right at that 3.7 liter mark. So so it's nearly
turbo.
Perfect. Yeah.
Let's see. Doug Darn says, I've been accused of being a dinosaur because I have 70 stinking carbs points, old school machines. I don't care. F them. I'm kind of right there with you because you know why? That stuff is reliable. There is nothing wrong with reliability.
Yeah. The only reason why I got away from points is because I drive my cars too much. In San Diego, I was putting 50 miles a day on my Dart, going to Crowell and back. So that's 250 miles a week. Plus, it was my daily driver on the weekends. And the points at the time, I just couldn't seem to find a decent set of points that would last more than a few months, and then they were just done. They were spent.
Well, Jonathan Couchy here is saying, put a Chevy 288 stroke offset ground crank in a 267 block and make a 221 just stroke small block Chevy. That thing would be a turd. I'm sorry. It really would. Small block Chevy, because the hit. All right. And the reason why I say that, I'm not trying to poke fun at you. The small block Chevys make good power because the heads flow. When you take that head and put it on this 221, that thing would have no port velocity whatsoever, and you couldn't use it for anything but like 9,000 RPM light switch, right? I mean, it would have to be very little work, and the engine would have to be spinning to the moon to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, you need something with the smaller ports that would be really amazing. I don't know, maybe. Well, remember some of those 305 cylinder heads had really rinky dinky ports.
Yeah. Boy, man, this 2 hours went by fast today.
Yeah, and I think we had a pretty good show tonight. We had a lot of questions, and there was a lot of interesting discussion here that happened tonight.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is that I prepared a hardcore tech for 8 about rocker arm geometry today, but it was just there was no time to interject it because we were going so like wide open. It seemed like the whole time. So I'll just save it for next week.
Yeah, well, and you know what? That's right. We did blow right past the hardcore tech stuff, huh?
Yeah, we were talking about camshafts at that time, so it just seemed to work. So I just elaborated on it a little bit more at that time.
Look at this. John Wilburn says the 268H is a 218 degrees at 50.
Oh, maybe I pulled it up here. Oh, it says extreme energy 268 says 224 230. I'm on the comp site.
I wonder if there's a different one. I wonder if there's a 268 XE.
I'm on the XE 268H.
Well, I don't remember the one that I used I did a 464 Buick for a guy in North Carolina, and it had, I put that 268H in it, and it was choppy.
Okay.
It is a straight pattern cam.
It is. Okay. A 268H is a straight pattern cam. The XE 268H is the bigger duration that I was saying. So I'm not sure what he said. Did he say 268 or XE 268?
No, it's 268H is all I got here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a high energy one. That's the straight duration camshaft. So if I looked that up wrong, I'm sorry. I thought it was an XE 268.
Exactly. So Doug Narden's saying that 4BT is 6BT minus 2 cylinders. Correct.
Yep.
All the parts are the same. That's what I always thought was neat. Is our rigid hull inflatable boats on the U.S. ships were powered by a 6BT Cummins, and you know they'd never throw any of the hot rod stuff at it. So you'd have this like meager meandering rib. You'd drive around. You'd have 20 guys in it. It's like, you know, and you're thinking, you know, these things are capable of making like 800 horsepower. Why are we not freaking jacking this up and at least just turning the timing up on the fuel? And I never understood that.
Yeah.
I guess that's because even with that meager, what is it, 155 horsepower and 450 foot-pounds of torque, 6BT bone stock, they would need outdrives like once a week. So
yeah.
Let's see. What is John saying about me? Dallas has exactly one vehicle in his driveway made in the last 3 decades. That's my wife's vehicle.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I'm the same way. The wife's vehicle, because you know we have the 3 kids, so we have a Jeep Cherokee for the 3 kids. But other than that, everything that I drive in my garage is 1960s. That's it.
Well, it's just it's so much simpler, and it's cheap to maintain. The Gouchy says it's okay, Dallas. That's the point of the 221 no power. It would sound pretty bitchin' though, because it would be way up there in RPM.
Dude, you know what? Make it on a flat plane crank and put titanium rods in it. If you're going to go all out, that way that thing would be a screamer then, because then you could even take the weight out of the crankshaft.
Yeah, It'd be super duper lightweight, spin so fast.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well,
Hey, go down to
oh,
James Mendyke.
okay. James Mendick. I normally miss the live slant cam suggestions. 68 fastback Barracuda, 8 1/4, 323 sure grip, 904, 25-inch tall tire. Planning on 4 barrel. Would like for it to be a peppy daily driver.
Perfect. I'm actually running that exact cam that you need in my car right now. I'm running it's a hydraulic profile, but I'm running it on solid master, so it's a little tighter lash. So it's going to be 6 on the intake, 8 on the exhaust. It's 217 duration to 50, and it's on a 108 LSA, and it's 487 as far as the at valve lift. And that right there, now you're going to have to do some work to the head as far as changing the springs out. You're going to want something, with that master, you're going to want to have maybe
Who makes
maybe
those, Cam? You
110,
do
maybe
that?
90 to 110 on the seat. Nothing crazy over the nose, maybe in the 250, 260 mark over the nose, because you're not really going to RPM crazy on it, but it works well and it has a great sound. If you go to Slant Daily Garage, it's a YouTube channel, which is mine, Slant Daily Garage. It's called the Lizard King, and it's basically my 4-door 1969 Dodge Dart that I drive, and that's the cam that's in it. And it sounds good, it runs good, and it does everything that you want it to do, and it gets out of its own way in traffic. With a 323 gear in it, you're really going to get out of your own way, especially with the 904. So you'll love it. That's a great camshaft. Slant Daily Garage at yahoo.com
Who
is
makes that cam, Shane?
no, it's a custom cam from Comp.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so you could just, it's Pulido at edelbrock.com. That's SPULIDO at edelbrock.com. I'll get you in touch with everything, and I'll tell the guys what masters to run on your cam, and you'll love it. It actually works amazingly great. I try to count up my camshafts that I've tried in the Slant 6. I think I've already crested 15 different cams that I have out there with different ones that they work, but I just was looking for the very last camshaft that would be considered daily driver, where all the vacuum works and everything, but you get that overlap. You want the sound, you want the power that you're looking for, and that way you can pull up in the Nissan Altima next to you. He's not going to beat you. So it's good.
That's cool.
Yeah,
and that's what I always like. Is like trying to make stuff run that wasn't intended to run.
Yeah. The Slant 6 is a gasoline diesel engine, essentially. It was designed to get mileage, not to do anything more than that, Let's see what else we got.
Okay. Mopar Man 1978 saying, Shane, that email again.
Oh, Slant Daily Garage at yahoo.com. That's Slant Daily Garage at yahoo.com.
Oh, Ed's machine is in the house. You know what? Hey, I screwed up because you were at the No Name Nationals, and I was wanting to talk to you because I had a set of 68 430 heads that got dropped off to me at the No Name Nationals. And I think just Mopar Joe brought up, hey, I should talk to Ed's machine and see and work something with them to have them work on the set of heads I picked up at the No Name Nationals. Because dude Mopar threw me a set of 430 heads that were just sitting under his bench. He's like, I'm tired of kicking them. So I just thought it'd be kind of neat if we did some together, But I should have hit you up, and I didn't have a chance. I was busy running around like a chicken with my head cut off. So,
so do we still have quite a bit of people in here right now?
There's 54 watching right now.
Yeah, you want to make another announcement about our special guest next week?
Yeah. So next week we were contacted by Riley at Riley's Rebuilds, and that's the young ladies team that was rebuilding Carter AFB and Edelbrock. What are they called? What is the Edelbrock version called? It's not an AFB, is it?
No, I think it's just
The
ABS
carburetor, huh?
Yeah, it's just not Edelbrock carb.
Yeah, but they were rebuilding those, and they're doing it for a part-time job. And she contacted us and said, "Hey, we're going to be going to SEMA. would you like for me to do a live show from SEMA next week during your live? And I'm like, that would be kind of cool because now you got Riley and her team at SEMA. Well, I don't know if her team's going. I know Riley is, but Riley's going to SEMA. She's going to be walking around, checking out a few booths, and then doing just a live deal for us, for the viewers at SEMA. So just let me know if you guys think that that's interesting, if you want to see that or not. She's keen to do it. So Shane and I were kind of keen to let her do it because I think it'd be kind of neat. There's a lot of y'all that have probably never been to SEMA, and you'll be able to do it live. So
yeah, and she's been on here once before, and it was awesome. It was really bitching.
Yeah, she was really good.
Hey, A Cove told me the name of it. I should know this, and I apologize I didn't, but it's actually called the Performer. Is the name of the type of carburetor?
Yeah, that's right. No,
Performer.
Performer carburetor.
Yeah,
and it always slips my mind because, to tell you the truth, everyone just refers to it as the Edelbrock carburetor, right?
Right. Me too. I do them by number. I know a 1407. Oh, I'm getting a 1407. That's a 750 carb, manual choke. That's how I just know them. 1405. So
yeah. Tom Brown says yes to Riley. He would love to see that the SEMA walkthrough with Riley. So
yeah, me too.
We'll go ahead and set it up. Doug Narden saying live from SEMA. Cool. Yeah, we'll set it up. We'll get it all taken care of, and that way next week we'll just make my machine picture really small over on the left-hand side, and Riley can drag you around SEMA and show you some booths that she, because I'll tell her to pick out some booths that she finds very interesting. I don't want to see the same run-of-the-mill stuff.
No.
I'd like to see something that's like
new.
Hey, when I walk away from here, I want my brain to come out my ear because it's been blown. My mind has been blown.
But it is SEMA, so the PRI for me is I like that because that's all the really new racing hardcore stuff. So that's what I seem to like a little bit more.
Well, maybe we can do something for PRI too. So I'll let you know. We'll get to work on that one.
Yeah.
But other than that, we got 4 minutes left, or 3.5 minutes left. Anything you want to plug?
Just the same stuff I'm kind of doing. I got my load spreaders. In fact, he came across on my email, so there's one person who wants another one right there, and then I'm working on that adapter to the A500. So that's coming along, and then I got the wife's car going, and I'm actually going to start working on my engine here soon. So for the Gen 3 Hemi, I took it back apart. I wanted to get some more bearing clearance on stuff because I really want to spin the RPM up. So I'm going to be building a Gen 3 Hemi again soon. So yes, I'm excited about that. That's really all I got going on.
I don't have anything cool like that. The super stock Buick small block will be back on the start stand here soon. I need to play with the carburetor and get it dialed in because December the 1st, that first week of December, it is going to the dyno. I need to get the 300 back out, play with it. I just cannot get that carburetor right. Man, I got to play with that thing. So I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Maybe I'll put that AFB that you're going to mail me on there. Or no, it's a Performer, right?
It's a Performer. Yeah, it's a 600 CFM. It would work perfect on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would be great, actually.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to set it up. I promise you. Look, I will get it set up. Just tell me when we get off the air here. Tell me the cam specs and so on and so forth that you're gonna have on it. I'll get it set up. You're gonna drop it on it, huh?
On the 300?
Yeah,
it's the same cam specs that you looked up the other day.
Oh, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah. That's for that car.
That's the mule motor. Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be easy then. I'm going to nail that thing then easily.
All right. Well, it sounds good to me.
So yeah, I'll send that thing out to you. Absolutely.
Well, sweet. At least I was to send it back to you once I see how it works on the dyno. How's that? But
no need. I'm going to try. I'm going to run it. I'm going to take it to the drag strip. What I'm going to do is a back-to-back test. I'm going to do the 600 versus the Holley 2-barrel. And that way, now that I have tires, so that way I can do it all in the same day. So I'm going to do the 4-barrel since I know it's set up perfectly. I want to put the Holley 2-barrel on it. It was a 350 CFM, and then that way locally, then I'll have a throttle body and then the multi-port, and then when I go turbo, so that way you can actually see the difference between one carburetor to the next and record the air fuel mixture as it goes down the track. So that way you can kind of see how things work between the two.
Yeah, well, you put some science behind this. Yep. It's machine saying, Dallas, what do you think the 300 will make? They were all rated on torque back in the day, and this is a 67 two-barrel that has a 65 four-barrel intake manifold on it.
Yep.
I'm going to assume it's somewhere around 250, 260, something like that. I have been doing some research on the 300 stuff, and I'm going to do a small block comparison video here soon, because there's a lot of intricate things that I've seen throughout the small block, especially the 215 to 300, 350. Well, actually, the entire small block Buick family. That's significant differences between each individual piece. So I am going to sit down and do a video on that. But I'm thinking that thing should be 250 to 260, somewhere around there. This one's pretty ragged out, and to be honest with you, Ed, it was sitting in a pile of oil dry when I got it, and it had no pan on it and no intake or heads. And so all I did was vacuum the kitty litter out of the inside of the motor. It spun over fairly free, and it has some serious pits in the cylinder walls. It looks like something that Indiana Jones would have to blast across. So, it might be a little down on power on cylinder number 3. So I'm hoping 250. But
and we're going to even the playing field. I'm going to make that camshaft exactly the same, so that way it's just a cylinder head comparison that you're going to be doing.
That is good. You know what? That'll work, because you know what? I'll put that the Edelbrock Performer 600 on there, and then I'll put that same carburetor on that single plane intake manifold I got to use on the 300 heads. So it'll be nothing change except for the heads and it is a single plane, but they don't. This would be really hard to make a dual plane for this thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it'll definitely just be that then. So we'll see if there's anything different.
Yeah, but, perfect. Well, that's the whole point where we do this and see what's going on. So
exactly.
Awesome.
All right. Well, until next week, Shane and I are out of here. Keep the greasy side down and the shiny side up.
Yeah, and if there was a question that we didn't get to that you want answered, or just want to get deeper involved in a question that I already answered, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Once again, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. This time of year, I am a little busy. It is getting close to SEMA time, so my time is very, very valuable right now as far as to my company. And then at PRI. So I do the best I can getting these questions answered, but just a heads up that if it takes a little few days to get to them, I apologize. It's just that I'm just really busy right now.
Well, and I'm not as busy as Shane, but I am fairly busy. But feel free to email me. I'm dallas@ahraonline.com. So I will see you guys next Wednesday.
Yeah, you guys take it easy. Thanks for coming out. You guys take it easy.
We're out here.
Late.